Hi everyone, this is Chris and I'm bringing you an overview of New Zealand jazz experimental label Braille, who operated at Wellington starting around the mid-1980s. I just got the final piece I needed to complete their vinyl discography. So the label Braille kind of announced itself with a statement of intent really for this double LP of avant-garde free jazz from the primitive art group, 5-tread drop down. And what you've got in here are a bunch of players. How many have we got? 1, 2, 3, kind of 5 players who reappear throughout this entire series. In fact, over all of the records I'll show here, there are only 11 musicians, and there's probably about 6 or 7 of them who consistently appear on most of these records. And so for the first record out on a label, they certainly weren't compromising with this double LP. And I have put together a podcast playing bits and pieces from these as well, so you can take a listen. But next up, Braille 2, and the label started to gain a bit of an aesthetic which they stuck with, which was doing their own screen printed covers. And it was also at this point as well that they introduced the purple label, which was to feature through most of the releases with silver print. And this is a 3-piece, although featuring all of the players feature in Primitive Art Group. David Donaldson, Anthony Donaldson and Stuart Porter on here. And again, this is kind of very jazzy, but perhaps a little more kind of quirky. They've got Anthony Donaldson on fun percussion, kind of an 80s term that starts to give you a bit of a sense of some of the kind of goofy oddball direction that the label was heading in. That's the Black Sheep Braille 2. The third release on the label, again with screen printed cover, was a return from the Primitive Art Group. This is Future Jaw Clap, a single LP this time, but again along the same lines as the first release. And you've got all your kind of typical jazz instrumentation in here, double bass, saxophones, clarinet, percussion, and a bit of guitar and organ in here as well. Again, kind of free jazz. The fourth Braille release, I love the cover on this one, Jungle Suite, A Walk of Snipe. This is the first to feature vocals. Janet Roddick, Neil Duncan and David Long on this. Janet Roddick mainly kind of ululation on here, and she'd develop more of a straight ahead singing style on later releases. This 3-piece here, David Long, his first appearance I think, and he later went on to the Mutton Birds. Many of these other people on these records have gone on to perform in lots of other things and were contemporary with the releases on Braille as well. Quite prolific musicians. And so on here you've got saxophone, bass clarinet, melodica, tin drum, cello, guitar and banjo, but as I say with that kind of improvised ululation kind of style of vocals coming through in here from Janet Roddick, a little bit of singing. Singing develops more on this 4 volts, and this not really a change of direction, but kind of a branching into something that the label would pick up more on, which was kind of this kind of quirky, jazzy art pop style. Something's burning from 4 volts. So this is the 2 Donaldson brothers, Neil Duncan and Janet Roddick, and a bunch of covers on here, things like Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, Light My Fire, These Boots Are Made for Walking, the Star Trek theme. And so yeah, there's kind of more of this kind of goofiness coming through, the oddball stuff. 4 volts, and that will be developed further later on. This is from 1986. So I think the first record was out 84, 85. So they were pretty busy, and a lot of Arts Council support coming through for these releases as well. And obviously that they're working as a collective, doing the recording, the writing, and the artwork. So yeah, that was 5, so is that right? Yep, so we're up to Braille 6, and this is actually the first one I heard, the Family Mallet, Bush's Bottom. Again, this is kind of mainly jazz instrumentation, saxophones, clarinet, percussion, trumpet, trombone and tuba, so a lot of brass on here. There's a local coffee roastery where I was one Saturday morning. They've got a turntable there and a bunch of records, and people put on records while they're waiting for their coffees, and I saw this in there and I thought, oh, this looks interesting, I'll stick it on. And you kind of pretty much cleared the place out. I certainly got some disapproving looks from other patrons when there's kind of weird kind of just hard, kind of brass stabs and stuff coming through. Though this is, I think, a really fun record, the Family Mallet. So everything on Braille is interesting, and some of it is exceptional, and I'd put this one into the exceptional camp. Rabbit Lock, it's Braille 7. David Donaldson, David Long, Malcolm Reed, also featuring Janet Roddick, Anthony Donaldson, Neil Duncan and Stuart Porter, names that appear again and again throughout the discography. And this one, because it's got drums, double bass and cello, baritone saxophones, I think is a bit more rhythmic, and yeah, a really interesting record, this one. Yeah, and as I say, kind of more rhythmic, more percussive, and yeah, a real standout. Rabbit Lock, the backbone, again with the screen printed cover. Probably my standout for me of the Braille releases is what's playing at the moment. David Watson, Reference. I think this is a solo record, there's no credits for anyone else on here. David Watson playing kind of textured and treated guitar, and a concept album or a themed album of sorts, with reference point and song tracks such as Code, Read a Cipher, Write in Cipher, The Key to a Code, the arithmetic symbol 0, kind of exploring those ideas. And I love the artwork on this one. Unfortunately, my ones have got a bit of sticker damage there because of the screen printing. The sticker didn't like it, but I think, although it's not really kind of well known, I think any fan of New Zealand experimental music should seek this one out. It's really strong, great record. And David Watson left New Zealand shortly after this, went to New York, and has gone on to release a whole bunch of stuff, kind of with guitar, but also moving into bagpipes as well, and exploring drones that way. And on vinyl, there's a couple of releases, one in the Shirley Jangle, another in Glacial, that both feature Lee Ronaldo from Sonic Youth, so he's collaborating with them. He's also got a collaboration with Alistair Galbraith, which is out on vinyl, and a lot more on CD as well. Braille 9, the 6 volts have now expanded to the 6 volts, the 4 volts have expanded to the 6 volts. So you've got the Donaldsons, David Long, Janet Roddick, Steve Roach, Neil Duncan, and they're kind of, again, kind of more of a song approach to the 6 volts than some of the other jazz stuff. It's still got the kind of arty jazz instrumentation, but definitely songs on here. A couple of covers, Duke Ellington, Led Zeppelin, they cover Black Dog, and a bunch of original material on here as well. So on here we've gone, yeah, so kind of away from the screen printing, so photographic reproduction on here, and they also changed up the label, so we've got the 6 volts, so still it's not silver, that's white on purple, so they've moved away from the silver, and you're differentiating. The 6 volts were becoming reasonably popular, playing around the country, and had a bit of a following. And their next record, which doesn't have a Braille catalogue number, was put out and licensed with Festival Records and released in Australia as well as New Zealand, Stretch from the 6 volts. And again, this is much more of a pop focus, and you've got, I think, just about, not not all, but mostly original material on here. But yeah, definitely much poppier. There was a 7-inch single which I haven't got. I'd love to get that to complete the discography, although all of the songs are on this record. Crying Shame was the A side of that single, so you've got that 6 volts logo coming on here, and yeah, so by this time you've got festival label, although it is catalogued as a Braille record as well. This was 1991, so over the period of six or so years, these 10 records out through Braille Records. And as I say, anyone who's into New Zealand jazz or New Zealand experimental music, I highly recommend you seek them out. They're not always easy to find, but one of the things you do find with kind of, being experimental jazz records is when you do get them, they're often in really, really good condition because they haven't been played that much. But yeah, thanks for watching. There is, as I say, a podcast that goes with this. I'll put a link below so you can take a listen to what's on the records as well. Cheers.